So in this part of the chapter, I'll be talking to you about the factors affecting the distribution of population and population change. So basically, all the reasons, all the factors that we have to take into cognizance when we're talking about human resources, and when we're talking about that, what are the reasons that these resources are, evidently found in higher in some areas as compared to other areas. What are the possible reasons? So let's get started. So there are various factors affecting distribution of population, and these factors can be broadly categorized into two types: geographical factors and social, cultural, and economic factors. And you know, in all these two umbrella terms, also there are various other, you can say, attributions or factors or determinants as to why a population is higher in one part of the world as compared to the other. So when talking about geographical factors, we have to take into consideration about the topography, climate, soil and water, also mineral of a particular area. Well, now what do we mean about all these? So it's easier to understand. Topography, if you may understand, if you may remember, we've also talked about in the previous chapters, right? So it's basically about the terrain of a particular land. So obviously, people would prefer to live in areas that are plains, right? So high mountainous area, plateaus, okay, or deserts. So all these kinds of area are avoided. And plains. Why plains are preferred? Because the area is low lying, it is leveled. Okay, there is no ups and downs in the terrain, the topographical, you can say, structure of a particular place. Also, there is the availability of river water, right? Because naturally plains are accompanied by fresh flowing resources of water, right? So that problem is also being solved. I can grow crops, I can you participate in agriculture, I have also access to water. Okay, so topography, water, then soil. Fertile soil is also found mostly around these areas, right? So people would prefer to, inhabit those areas that have higher fertile soil as compared to what? As compared to areas such as deserts that have sandy soil, as compared to areas that are very, very cold, right? Um, uh, so cold that there is no proper vegetation there, right? So coming to the climate part, so people would prefer to live in the temperate areas, right? Often the higher tropical areas are avoided. So the equator part, if you may think about, that is the hottest, the climate is hottest in this part, right? So people either prefer to live above or below this equator, this imaginary line, right? Because there you can see that the temperature is shifting from the tropical towards temperate, or if you go more north or more south, then you may also come towards the most temperate climate that, factually that you can call it as such. Okay, so what are these areas? These are actually plain, low level areas, right? They have the access of water, river resources, right? So you won't be possibly thinking of living in desert because there is no water, there is no fertile soil. Okay, there is also no plains, right? And the climate is also very harsh. So you see, all of these, factors, geographical factors, they are interdependent on each other, right? Also, if you take into consideration about minerals, then in all those areas where you have, the abundance of quality minerals which you can mine. Why are you supposed to mine? So that you can, contribute towards an economic growth, right? So linking this part of factors to the other part, right? Leading to some economic growth, so that a sustenance could be found, right? So building up of industries, building up of proper tools, so that the habitation, the population could prosper well. So example is that diamonds is found in South Africa, or oil is found in the Middle Eastern part of the world, right? So earlier it was all desert, there was no population. But once oil was found, the crude oil was discovered, that, oh, it's there. So people could, then understand that even though the area is arid, but with this advancement, we can actually, transform this area into a living area. Okay, so that we can have supply of water. Why? Because we have huge amount of crude oil and it is demanded all over the world. Okay, so we can easily participate into the export business. We can earn money and we can transform this into a very advanced area, so that people can come here, live here, prosper here, earn here a very, a high quality of living. So coming and relating this part now to the other part, that is towards the social, cultural, economic factors. So what what would be under the social factor, right? So we need those kind of living areas that have good housing opportunities, right? Good housing opportunities that can provide better education systems to the children, right? Not just the children, even adults, right? Higher education, so that all those capabilities, those mindset, those knowledge about the human resources that we have been talking about, that can be um, that can be developed, right? So better opportunities of education, better housing areas, better what healthcare facilities, right? So that if in case some people are falling sick, then they can resort to advanced medical care. Okay, so those kind of social areas are what people would look for when they're inhabiting an area, right? Then, cultural factors. So, some people, mostly who are traditional, right, they also resort to some religious plus some cultural value of life, right? So, not just religious or cultural, it could also be spiritual. Why not spiritual? It could also be spiritual, right? So, for example, Varanasi in India, okay, and all those areas where you have shrines of gods and goddesses, right? Towards the northern part, even Kedarnath. So Kedarnath is situated in a mountainous area, but since it is attributing towards a huge cultural or spiritual significance of catering to a particular group of people, people do actually live there, right? And people do actually resort to go to that area to live for a couple of days, weeks, months, so that they can enjoy, they can immerse themselves into that cultural, you can say, excess. Okay, then economic factors, like I told you, related to minerals, climate, soil. So depending upon where you are living, if you have high quality of soil, high quality of minerals, high quality of water, you can actually take these natural resources and you can use them for the development of man-made resources, right? For the development of industries, okay, for the development of various other businesses, factories, right? Even corporate businesses, right? So that further they can aid into growing up of other man-made resources, sometimes also human resources. Okay, so these factors, if you may think about it, are actually interdependent on each other, and they play a very significant role as to how a population is concentrated in one part of the world, and how all these factors they are affecting. So that even if people who are choosing to live in the mountainous areas, there are certain qualities of that particular area that they are choosing, okay, and they are choosing to prosper in that area because that those areas might give them some profit, some economical gain. Okay, so all of these factors work hand in hand. Then let's talk about population change. Okay, so population change refers to change in the number of people during a specific time. Okay, so population change refers to change in the number of people during a specific time. Now, what could be the reason behind this change? Now, till the 1800s, till the 1800s, if you have been studying your history well, okay, so you will be having a very brief idea at least that um, whatever kind of advanced technology that we are very comfortable and very used to right now, they were actually being developed, invented, or whatever during the 19th, 20th, and more advanced, of course, in the 21st century. So during this time, there were not so much you can say advancement in the fields of what, in the fields of medicine, right? In the fields of medicine, in the fields of also fooding, okay, and what, in the fields of different industries, right? So why am I talking about this? Because if there was no advancement in medicine, then if even if a simple cold, viral, used to spread, poxes, small poxes, you have heard about this, right? Cholera, typhoid, all those kind of numerous diseases that we have certain medications now. Earlier, when it was finally erupting, these diseases, there were no medicines, there were no vaccines, there were no important supplements that you could take in order to strengthen your immune system against these diseases, right? So there was no advanced medical system. There was no advanced, you can say, food and water supply as well. So all those people who were rich, they were able to afford all of the excesses, and of the people who were poor, they were forced to a struggle in bonded labor, sometimes even just be a beggar on the streets, right? So there was no better chain of supply of food and water. So what I mean by better source of better chain of supply is that there was no import export system, across different continents, countries as well. Okay, so that industries, right? Because whatever source of economic growth that one country has today in this 21st century, in that during the 1800s, there was not as such, right? People were only uh, just beginning to develop and invent and immerse themselves into all those different kinds of advancement that can actually prosper the mankind. So the population during this time was growing, but was actually very steady, it was actually very slow. Okay, there was no increment in the population so much. Why? Because better resources to medical supply, food and water supply, that is nutrition, and also the social housing industry, because the industry part is actually related to all that social and economic factors that we have talked about, right? Because if you don't have money, how will you have better sources of housing? How will you have better sources of education? Again, medical sources, right? So all of these are interconnected. So there was not much development, not much advancement. It was actually being explored. Slowly and gradually, towards 1804, the population finally reached 1 billion. Okay, then in 1959, then the population reached 3 billion. Okay, and in 1999, that is just towards on the brink of the 21st century, the population reached 6 billion. You can also see here in this graph that towards 2028, 24, the population is estimated to reach or even exceed the 9 billion mark, right? So what is this happening? This, you can say, result in the change of population is actually what is referred to as population explosion. Means an excess in the change of population is seen, right? An excess, you can say, an explosion, okay, and a sudden outburst, because the population was growing steadily up until the 1800s, 1850s, right? But as soon as we enter the 20th century, towards the middle of the 20th century, the population started spiking up, right? You can see 1959, 3 billion, and in just a few in just the same century, mind you, the population reached almost double. So there is an explosion happening. There is an outburst happening. Why? Because of technology, because of advancement, because now we have new advances of medical system, medical care. We have higher resources of food and water supply, and we have new and advanced equipments, assets that can help us lead a better social and economic life. So what this all resulted was in that the number of deaths now being reduced, and the number of births were actually gradually rising. Because if the number of people dying, they are less because of all of these factors that I talked about, then naturally there can be no deterrent in the number of increasing population. So the number of birth rates, you can say, I'll be talking about this in the just the next slide, was actually greater than the number of death rates. All right, and that is actually the result or the reason behind this population explosion. So you can see here in this small, you can say, Venn diagram, that factors such as birth rate, death rate, migration as well, they are involved as into assess a particular. They're involved to assess the gross population, total population of a particular area. The difference between this birth rate and death rate of a country is called the natural growth rate. What is this birth rate? This birth rate is actually number of births per thousand people. So for every thousand people in a particular area, the number of births that are occurring, that is actually calculated as the birth rate. Then what is death rate? Just the opposite, right? The number of deaths that is actually occurring for every thousand people. Okay, and the difference between this birth rate and death rate is what we called the natural growth rate. So the difference between birth rate minus death rate is what we call the natural growth rate. Okay, then another factor is migration. Migration is you can say the coming in and the coming out of various people of a country, out of a country or into a country. So migration is actually, you can say, of you can consider migration as being divided into two types, for the lack of a better word, just for the sake of understanding, right? So there are two kinds of migration that we can talk about. One is immigration and one is emigration. So let me tell you, if a developing country has lesser job opportunities, right, lower standard of life, that some people in those developing countries would aspire to go to developed countries so that they can easily seek for high paying jobs, so that they can also live that higher quality of life, not just for themselves but also for their families, right? So uh, this is what is known as emigration. So people are moving out of their countries to other countries in order to look for better sources of life. And this can happen between different countries. This can also happen between one country. So people from the rural areas, they're coming to the urban areas. Why? Because in rural areas there is a lack of opportunity, but the urban areas provide numerous opportunities in terms of various jobs, various kinds of livelihood, right? Better quality of life. Okay, so that is known as emigration. Immigration is when in those developed countries that I just talked about, people would be flying from different areas towards those advanced areas, right? So naturally, the population in that advanced area would increase. Okay, so that is known as immigration. So countries such as the USA, Australia, countries that are already advanced, that witness an influx of people, an increase in population, immigration. Okay, then countries such as Sudan and other developing countries from where people go out in order to look for better opportunities, and they are actually emigrating, moving out. All right. So these different factors, the birth rate, the death rate, migration, these are the factors that we have to take into account when you are talking about population change, because population change in a particular area depends that how many people are dying, how many people are being born into the world, and how many people are either moving out of that particular area or coming into, adding, thus adding towards the already existing population rate or number. All right. So this part of the chapter, we have covered about the population. We have seen that how this is changing, what are the different factors that are involved in changing of a particular population of a particular place, right? In the next part of the chapter, that would be the final part, I'll be taking you through population pyramids. Okay, how can you demographically, means on a map, you can how can you demographically illustrate or represent the different kind of you can say not a different kind of, but the different structural, you can say, division of population, right? According to the various quantities, the number of quantities of the human resources, right? So when I'm talking about this particular terminology, quantities of human resources, so I am actually, you can say, denoting man as in man, woman, a child, baby, an elderly person, okay, in the context of the term resource, right? Because we are talking and we are learning about resource, right? So therefore the use of the word quantity. Okay, so all of this in the next part of the chapter. Stay tuned, and I'll see you later. Then next we'll be learning about patterns of population change. So now that we have seen that this population is changing depending upon the birth rates, depending upon the death rates, and also somewhat dependent upon the migration that is happening, either immigration or emigration. Now, what are the different patterns of this population change? So in the world's total population is rising rapidly, but not all countries are experiencing growth. Means in some places there are still higher death rates, lower birth rates, depending upon the lower advancement, technological advancement, right? So let's take the example of Kenya. In Kenya, there is both high birth rate as well as high death rates, right? So both this increment in the birth rate, I'm sorry, the spelling is wrong. Both in the increment of the birth rate as well as the death rate. What we are witnessing is that whatever babies are being born, they're either dying at that infant stage, or maybe at adolescence. Okay, and very fewer people are getting their opportunity to go into the old age. A lot of adults and elderly people, they're also dying. Why? Because Kenya is not so much advanced. There is still a better need of it's still in a better need of a medical facility, housing, all those kinds of changes, factors that we have talked about, right? Now slowly and gradually Kenya is being helped by other advanced countries, and the death rate is is actually, people are trying to lessen that rate, so that whatever infants are being born, they get that opportunity, they get that better medical health care, so that they can grow on to become better individuals, right? Then the next example that we're taking would be of United Kingdoms, UK. Okay, this country has lower birth rate as well as lower death rates. Why is this happening? Because owing to better advancement in technology, the death rates are naturally very low. Birth rates are also low. That is dependent upon the choice of the people, right? And also as regard to the population. So UK is not as populated as Kenya. Okay, so the birth rate is also low and the death rate is also low, because it is an advanced, developed country. Okay, so with this these two examples, you can determine that there is a difference in the population change. The pattern as such is changing according to different areas, right? So till here we have learned about what are the factors that affect change in the population, how birth rates, death rates, migration, they can determine population change in a particular area, and also advancement, technological advancement, modernity as such. Okay, in the next part of the chapter, I'll be taking you through population pyramids. Okay, what are they? We'll find about in the next part of the chapter.